our academic legacy is British elitist legacy. And even the A levels in Britain, was something that just had been introduced around the Second World War period. So it wasn't something that had existed forever, even in Britain. It was just introduced as a mechanism of control by the what are called the Oxbridge, these Oxford and Cambridge elitists.
Yeah.
Yes, elitists who did not believe that higher education was for the masses. So they wanted to make it. They wanted to make higher education as elitist as possible. Just very few people should ever get to universities. And even when you look at the University of East Africa, that was the philosophy behind it, that we should have very few people going to universities. We need just to create a small elite class that we can control, and this elite class will indoctrinate it, they'll just be our clones, there in Africa. So and they really feared democratization of higher education, because if you democratize higher education, then it will be difficult to control Africans. Now, that's a contradiction, because African nationalists were talking about, all these opportunities that would flow once independence comes. But to them, they were not even thinking that, introduction of A levels would end up, making university education elitist. The Americans are for an American system,
What was that about? Is it that Americans want Africans to get higher education, or why are they concerned about the inequality?
One thing about the Americans is Americans are very fond of efficiency, efficient allocation of resources. So to them, they were arguing that, look, this university you are creating, these elites you are creating them in a very expensive manner. So because it's very few people, and you can see, like in 1963, they were like 63, 64, just very few people at the University of Nairobi. So all these resources are being utilized to create, very few people. So Americans were saying, let's have a system where we can create more. These resources are enough to educate more Africans. But there's something else going on there. There's tension between Americans and the British. So, and this is a tension that had been there for a while, because actually initially Americans were in support of independence, African independence, because they didn't want African resources. Of course, I have to qualify this by saying everything is about their self-interests.
Yes.
It might sound to us as if they are thinking about us, but they are not. It's about their interests. So Americans during the colonial times did not like the fact that to get resources in Africa, they had to go through Europeans.
I didn't know that one.
Yeah, so if an American company wants to exploit whatever cocoa in Ivory Coast, they have to go through France, right? And of course, France will not allow them.
Of course.
Things like those. So the Americans did not like the fact that Africa was basically dominated, monopolized by Europeans. So they wanted Africa independence so they can deal directly with Africans, needing to go through, these cycles. So there was tension there, because now the British also started denigrating American education system, right? And this is something that has, was really indoctrinated into our minds, African minds, because as late as the 90s, I could hear people saying, "Oh, American education is low quality,"
But even this, and this is what I was saying, and I was going to ask you if you agree, even this bile against 844, and CBC is returning us to 6-year high school, which is
yes.
A-level, really.
Yeah.
When I read that, I saw that tension, the same one. I don't know whether you'd agree with that.
Yes, it is. It is. You're very right. It is, and especially among those older Kenyans,
yes,
who are indoctrinated by the British, or who went through. Some will say we were not indoctrinated by the British because we went to school after independence, but still they went to a system that was created by the British, right?
Mm-hmm.
So those prejudices still existed in this in the society and in the system. So especially in these 50s, late 50s and early 60s, the British did not like to hear anything about these graduates who are coming from
United States,
US. Yes,
I can imagine.
In fact, the only thing that helped to mend the fences between the British and the Americans was the Cold War. So if it were not for the Cold War, it would have been these differences would be major, would be great. But because of the Cold War, the British and Americans found themselves on the same side, because now they had a bigger enemy. So now instead of frustrating American graduates, what ended up happening is now Americans, those who had gone to school in America and Britain, got together. In the case of Kenya, took charge of, were the ones who became the leaders, took charge of everything, and now they started frustrating, those who had gone to school in the East, Soviet Union,
and India, maybe. I don't know whether.
Yeah, and even India in some ways. So those became the big enemy. Now, so that kind of solved the tensions between the British and Americans. But initially, there were big tensions there.
That is such a pity that we squabble over divisions that they're not ours.
Exactly.
So, before we get to the famous 844 that everyone hates, just talk a little bit about the curriculum, because I didn't quite understand that section. Because of being a B.Ed, I didn't understand. I never understood the way the 311, 322, I never understood. What was that about? And then what was the philosophy? Because Americans do liberal arts, and then you have the British doing elitism. So how did that play out in what was being taught at the universities?
Yeah, so there was a debate, in the Bologna during the Bologna conference. Is it pronounced Bologna or Bologna? It's
Bologna.
Bologna.
Oh, the one which I was talking about is the Spanish. Anyway,
Spanish?
The one of this I think it was the 90s, was a Spanish one. The one that was imposed on us.
Okay, so there was an earlier Bologna conference. There was the 1963 one, which raised the funds, and I think this was a later one. So the Americans, of course, have you've explained it. So the American education system has been liberal education. So you go to university, you take all these liberal arts, courses, and then for the first 2 years, and then by that time you decide what you want to do, and then now focus on what you want to graduate. But you have a basis of liberal arts. So Americans were advocating for that during that conference, and a few other people, especially I came to find a Kenyan who was called Mbirika, who had written at that time. He had written a lot about, higher education, and he was kind of a proponent of a liberal arts education. And it was even suggested by another commission that was set up, especially in Uganda. It was called the Castle Commission, but it looked at Ugandan education in generally, as it relates to East Africa. So there were people who were advocating for an American curriculum, an education system, basically, and curriculum. They were saying it was better for Africa than the British elitist system. So one thing that about the 311, 321 that you mentioned is, when you go to, and this applies mainly for the BAs, right? So if you're going to study Bachelor of Arts, and I guess even Bachelor of Science, you started with studying 3 subjects. You could study history, philosophy, and let's say sociology. And then, so first year you do that. Then the second year you choose whether you want to do history, and then you do history, or you do philosophy. So the opponents, the Americans, were arguing that is too specialized, that system. Initially, you need to expose students to a broad range of, disciplines and perspectives. And once they experience that, now, first of all, they have a common basis, but also they now can decide what's their interests and pursue it. And, in our system, our interests, you are supposed to develop them when you're 10 years old, or 11, when you're very young.
Yeah. I've really complained about that because that ideology came back with CBC.
Yes, exactly. Which goes against, human development. That's not how children do not develop that way. Many people at different times in their lives, they have various, interests based on different experiences. They go through life. So telling a 10-year-old or 12-year-old, decide what you want to study, for the rest of your life, it's not right,
But it's aristocratic when you think of it, because the aristocratic system, you become the worker you were born as. You stay in the class where you were born.
Yes. Your ways are set at birth. You're born, what will happen to you. So, but for the rest of us, that's not how, things are. So there was that big debate. And actually, this reminds me of something else that you've mentioned a lot, and people keep on mentioning it, but there's no context provided for it. And this is technical education.
I was just about to ask you that. Okay, excellent.
So, and it's somehow connected with these debates of a curriculum that we were discussing. So, those people who are advocating for the American system, one thing they were saying is we should not have 2 tiers of higher education, like liberal universities and technical colleges. We need to find a way to make to combine them, to have, it's all higher education, but you can study technical subjects, but also end up doing liberal arts or whatever you want, right? So the argument was that, when you have technical colleges and universities, obviously universities end up having higher prestige and status than technical colleges. And that has an effect on people, right? So the proponents of the American system were arguing that why don't you have a two-year colleges, which students, if they want to go to study some technical subjects, they can do their 2-year, but they should also be exposed to some liberal arts there. And then, you know, you can graduate if you want to become an electrician, you can become an electrician and go work. If you want to continue and be, you know, transition, get your credits transferred to apply to a degree, you know, they be applied and you can get a degree, right? Or you can go work and come back and just enter university, right? So there should be a smooth way of transitioning from technical colleges to universities, instead of just making universities separate from technical colleges. And the reason why universities and technical colleges are separate in Kenya is because in 1940s, I can't remember the exact year, I think 1944, 45 there was a commission. So actually it's around 1945. There was a commission that was set up on technical colleges in Africa after the Asquith Commission, which proposed universities. And that commission clearly stated that technical colleges should be complete in themselves. They should never be connected with universities. So the British colonialists came up with this idea, and we grabbed it and we kept it. So, so there was a big debate in the early 60s saying, you know, let's do away with this idea of technical colleges being complete in themselves. Let's find a way where, you know, we can make universities and technical institutions, you know, connected.
Seamlessly connected, yeah.
Yes, connected. We design curriculums so that, you know, people can get to technical institutions, and if they want, they can end up getting their universities smoothly, you know, without a lot of, you know, artificial barriers created. And so, of course, that was rejected. That was rejected.
Hey, Mwenda, Yani, what you're saying is that there's a deep, which is in the book, there's such a deep theme of elitism running in the way we think about education. And that explains why people are so obsessed with this technical versus the other one. And what I get always amazed by is that in their minds, when they're talking technical, they're not thinking they'll be in that technical. Technical is for the others. The others who will not be posh like me.
Exactly, because that's what the British were thinking. You know, when they said technical colleges are complete in themselves, what they are saying is this: we don't want those people who are not endowed intellectually like us to come and join us at university level. You know, that's the thing, you know. But so, there's there's a deep problem, and what I would say is our lack of researching about you know our education makes us continue you know, reproducing these problems over and over again, because we don't know what ails us, what's the origin of it, you know. Yeah,
that's such a good point. I hadn't even made that connection, but you know, these narratives are staying because we are just not doing the work of researching and finding out where they came from. Like when, you know, people would say about CBC and saying technical subjects, they would sound like this report of 1924. What was it called? The Phelps-Stokes Commission.
Phelps-Stokes, yes.
Like, you can't still be repeating that thing in the 21st century. As if we had not been. Hey,
yes.
Oh, that thing is so bad.
It's the same debate that Du Bois and Booker T. Washington used to have in 1890s, right? So So we have debates that were settled 100 years ago.
More than 100 years
More
ago.
than 100 years ago, continue to, to define us at today's time. It's sad. But of course, remember, there's a reason why you don't do research. It's because our leaders don't want us to do research. They don't want us to uncover these things, because when you start researching, you don't know where you end up. You end up probably uncovering them, and they don't want that. So that's why they denigrate. They say, oh, history is about Vasco da Gama. We want development. We don't want Vasco da Gama. It's which is crazy, but.
Okay, we are going to jump the Kenyatta period, because basically your book argues that Kenyatta didn't touch it. He left the system intact. Yes. And that one of the worst things about that is that now it imported the tribal, discrepancies that the colonialists had put in place in the 1950s as a way to deter the Mau Mau movement. And maybe we'll kind of keep on referring to it, but I want to come to the Moi era, because you make such an important point that I had never seen. Has anyone said what you have said? I've not seen, which was that Moi was trying to fix that inequality. So yeah, maybe you could just pull it apart.
Moi said people. Moi, that the first graduation ceremony that Moi presided, soon after Kenyatta died, he said exactly that. He said, we will transform universities because we want to, to give opportunities to more people. He said it in 1978, he repeated it in 1979, and he now set on doing that. So Moi, at times Moi is cast as someone who did not have, who was not brilliant, who was foolish and all that. Yes, he didn't have a high education, but he understood some things. He understood, for instance, the education legacy that the country had inherited. And of course, he was part of the system. I'm not saying he was a good person. No, he was part of the system, but it was a system initially controlled by Kenyatta. The problem that happened is that during Kenyatta time, the colonial legacy actually ended up benefiting people who came from well-endowed areas, central regions and Nyanza and places like those. And the people who came from areas that were kind of marginalized, and I don't like using that term a lot, but because a lot of Kenyans are marginalized. But people came from remote areas, or dry areas, and areas pastoralists, areas that do not have missionary, that were not dominated by missionaries during the colonial times. Those places were left behind by the system that was set. And of course, Moi came from such a place. So he decided you have to transform this system. So the 844 system was introduced by Moi to solve that problem of marginalization of his people, and people from marginalized places, to solve that problem of marginalization. And what you see happening is, of course, the key thing he did away with 2 years, right? The A levels. So, and that was smart. Whether he knew it or not, I don't know. But, once you do away with 2 years, now you have a lot of students graduating from at the end of Form 4. Now, so what it means is that there will be demand for more universities. initially when there were 2 years, there will be those Form 4 students who graduate, they will be whittled down big time. They will be cut down big time. Only a few will get to Form 5 and 6. And then at the end of Form 6, they'll be sorted again and selected. Very few will end up at universities. But now you do away with A levels. There's a lot of kids who are graduating at the end of Form 4. And that naturally will start creating demand for more universities. The other thing he did is that he established more schools in his areas. He started all those harambes. There were many schools that he created in the Rift Valley especially, but also in some other areas, but mostly in the Rift Valley. And that gave his people an opportunity, to acquire, secondary education. And then, of course, in tandem with that, it was creating these additional universities. And it's very revealing that the first university that Moi created, he set it up in Eldoret, Moi University, so there was a message there that he was sending, and, so yes, so he created Moi University. He got on, Kenyatta also, which Kenyatta University College was a university college of University of Nairobi until he elevated it into full university. And then Egerton and then others that came later on. So, Moi Moi transformed the system that had been set, through the 844. And one thing we kind of blame Moi, some people, the opponents of 844, they blame Moi for creating 844. But in fact, looking again at commissions, in 1975-76, there was the Gachadi report. And actually, the Gachadi report, one thing that it said was that there were actually a lot of students who are going to A levels, Form 5 and 6, and they were not joining university. They were not qualifying for university. So I remember there's a statement in the Gachadi report which was saying this is wasting 2 years. So instead of sending kids to A levels for 2 years and then not joining them, because A levels was supposed to be preparation for university. So if you take kids for 2 years to prepare them for university, and then you start creating artificial cutoff points, to join university, and you end up not, allowing many students to join university, then what was the point? They should have just gone and done something else after, Form 4 instead of wasting their 2 years. So there was something in the Gachadi report about eliminating actually, or reforming, something about reforming that system of 844 not 844, there's 7, what was it called?
763. Yeah.
That one. Reforming it 763, yes. Reforming it to avoid wastage at A levels. So of course that report was not acted upon. Then Moi came soon after and created this 844. So Moi did, that transformation was major. But he was doing his transformation at a time when there were other forces acting in the system. First of all, was the structural adjustments, programs that were introduced in the 80s and 90s. Of course, the economy was ran down. Moi was an autocrat. So all this transformation was happening at a time when there are, other forces that are underway.
And now coming to okay, maybe I'll get to that. But what is your impression of these commissions? I'm becoming very suspicious of the role of commissions. but your book seemed to be neutral on them. I don't know, what's your assessment of commissions and task forces and working party? Is it working group?
Working,
Those,
yes.
yeah, all those.
Working parties,
Yeah.
yes. So I think, as I mentioned, commissions are always created. Well, I don't want to say all commissions, but most commissions are created to serve the interests of the powerful elites. So, or the people in power, So look, back from during the colonial times, I've already mentioned, all these Asquith Commission. In the 50s, there was a Carl Sanders Commission, Lockwood Commission. Those commissions were being created because the British wanted the system, to orient the higher education system, the education system in general, in a certain way, to achieve certain ends, their own interests, right? So, like in the colonial times, we've mentioned the need for creating a new kind of colonial reform, So the commissions were there to serve the British. During the post-colonial period, similarly, there was a working party that was set up in 1969 to create, which ended up creating University of Nairobi. It was set up because the East African Commission, the East African community was having problems, and the East African University of East Africa was crumbling. So, so the commission was a way to manage, the dissolution of the University of East Africa. And one thing about that commission, it's funny because one of the members of that working party of 1969 was one of the members was Emma Njonjo, who was Njonjo's sister.
Yeah, I saw that.
Was not qualified to be in such a commission, but that tells you something, that this commission really was there to to advance the interest of the elites, because the elites did not want a new university ecosystem to emerge, which is different from what they wanted. So actually that commission is very important, because if you look at the members, Professor Gott was a member of that commission, and Professor Potter was who was he that time? He was
the principal of
University College Nairobi. Yes. They were actually trying to revive the debate about the kind of system. They wanted education system to become less British, and they gave a lot of well reasoned out arguments over why that should happen. But of course, that did not happen. The decisions that prevailed were decisions of the civil servants, senior civil servants, who are members of that commission. Of course, were the ruling elites. So, Emma Njonjo, Michuki, I think, was part of that commission. So people were not who were not academics, were the ones who decided how, Kenya's higher education future will be like, and not people who are academics. So Potter and Ogot, and actually Ogot paid heavily for that, because for his proposals, because he was not appointed to succeed Potter. He was not appointed the first vice chancellor of the University of Nairobi. They ended up going to appoint Karanja, who was a diplomat, Kenya's high commissioner in London, to make him now the 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 vice chancellor of University of Nairobi. So they bypassed, a seasoned academic who knew what was going on in higher education, and then they went to get a political appointee in London, the diplomat, to take control of that. So you can see commissions, and of course McKay Commission, which ended up bringing 844. Similarly, these were commissions that were being set up to achieve the ends of what the ruling elites wanted. And if the ruling elites, what they want, it doesn't matter what the commission, some members of the commission think or want. If there's some independent people in the commission who come up with alternative ideas, those ideas would be quickly, disregarded, as the case of Ogot and Porter happened in 1969. So all of them to the present. And again, the thing is this: the interests of the elites are not the interests of Kenyans. So those are two different things, our elite class, their interests are, to how they can survive and reproduce themselves, which has got nothing to do with really what's good for the people and for the country.
And what do we need to look at for us to democratize education? Because the experience of talking about CBC made me realize this thing has no democracy. We are just cogs in a wheel being expected to do what is dictated to us from Jogoo House. I think one of the things you have emphasized is the need for research. I had not made that connection, but now I have, that if we are not researching where the problems are coming from, then we are not going to be able to demand the kind of education we want. But, and including your assessment on CBC, what would you say we need to look at and to tackle for us to get a more democratic education system?
Wow, that's a $1 million question there. Because the thing is this: for us, I think, as mainly academics, I think we are operating in a very restricted environment. Probably the best we can do is research and uncover these things and talk about them the way you are doing, right? Because as long as we have the kind of leadership we have, leadership that really does not care about what's good for the people. It's what's good for them, and for the international capitalistic powers that kind of influence them. As long as that system continues to be in place, the best ideas cannot even be heard. No one can even listen to them. Like that will be squashed, and it's very sad because I've seen even academics come from here, go back to Kenya and become government officials themselves, and then they just become part of the system, and they continue now parroting the same things that are being parroted, instead of trying to bring a different different perspective, different view. I think that's why they appointed them, because those who appoint them know they will not rock the boat. But anything that goes against providing or democratizing education is really horrible. And this idea of trying to select kids from fourth grade and try to make them into some whatever they're claiming. It's that's a crazy idea. Like, well, there are some outliers. There's always some outliers. There will be one kid who is a genius, right? And they're really good in this or that. And yes, if there was a way to help that kid and mold them and help them excel, that is great. But we should not design a system that should serve outliers for the masses, right? So most, and do they have psychologists, or
or philosophers,
or philosophers, they, like majority of us, you have to be molded over time. You have to get many experiences, and then all that will, somehow set you in a certain way. But there's no way you and there were elements of CBC in 844. So you remember when 844 came, they were trying to make us into carpenters and tailors, and they would I remember those who were a little bit ahead of us, they were constructing traditional houses. Which now that is okay if you're trying to, it's part of the curriculum that, part of the curriculum experience, right? But to say mold you to become the best tailor in from fourth grade, and then you eventually become the best tailor in the world, it's a weird idea.
But it's aristocratic. It's an aristocratic idea.
It's a very aristocratic idea. So, and again, this goes all the way to higher education and, the technical versus universities, because now, these people create these conditions, like, the separation between technical institutions and universities that was created in the beginning, right? Because of elitist reasons, and ended up, giving prestige to universities more than technical education. But now they have weaponized that. Now, because they have mismanaged the economy, there are no jobs, everything is upside down. Now, instead of dealing with the problems that are there, that they have created, now they turn to education and say the reason why there are no jobs is because of our education system. It has got nothing to do with education.
But what is so surprising is how powerful that narrative is. Even if you provide the evidence, Kenyans can't hear. But it goes to what you're saying about research.
Yes, goes to research. The other thing about Kenyans is that our media. When you open up the newspaper, the front page, what you'll see is what politicians are saying, or what crazy idea now they have, what the fancy of the moment is. It's BBI, tomorrow it will be something else, and not so. What we consume is defined by very few people. The ideas that we have are ideas of these crazy people who rule us, you know. So 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 our ideas will be crazy, you know. We consume nothing, you know. No one knows what goes on beyond, you know, Uhuru, Ruto, Raila. No one, like, you know, anything else is immaterial to Kenyans, because when you open up, you know, when you listen to the news, that's all they talk about, you know, nothing else. And so when they come with this idea that universities are to blame for unemployment, you know, the people run with it because it's being said by the elites themselves who have been in control of those universities. So if someone like Magoha criticizes universities for not for unemployment, himself he was a vice chancellor of a university, then who has failed? It's him. Why is he running the education ministry, right? Because he was there, right? So do you fail and then you get promotion, you know, in the same field that you failed in? So so that's what I'm saying. I don't know how our system can be changed. I don't know how we can democratize education because of these, you know, ideas that are kind of, you know, prevailing. So I was saying weaponizing technical education, creating differences between technical education and university education, and now weaponizing it. Now the fancy is technical education. We blame universities for lack of jobs, when they are the ones who, you know, have messed up technical education from the beginning, who, instead of coming up with a workable system. So like I was saying, you know, initially the idea of transforming technical education into 2-year colleges and combining it with universities, you know, these ideas that have already been tried and tested. It's not like they are not inventing the wheel, right? So it wasn't something very radical, revolutionary. It's something that could have been used, and we could have implemented it in Kenya, and it would have been a good thing for the people. Not, of course, probably not for the elites, but for the people, you know. But we failed to do that, you know, at independence. In the last 20 years, they started converting all the technical institutions that were there, converting them to universities, you know, and then they start saying we have too many universities. The same people who have been doing this, you know. So our problem is up there.
Our problem is at the ideas, actually.
Yes.
And what is so frustrating is that people say ideas is too much theory. It is not practical enough. And yet all our practical problems are from problematic ideas.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, you've given me a lot to think about. I'm especially interested in the theme of elitism now because I'm beginning to see it a little bit, that it's actually very complicated and very difficult to remove. And it's so insidious, but that's the idea driving what we are doing today. I want to thank you so much for this very wonderful conversation and for this great book. I hope Kenyans will pick it up and read it. And I'm looking forward to more research from you because you have the opportunities. So we will be sitting at your feet, listening to what you're bringing out so that we can disseminate it here where it is a bit more difficult to do the kind of research that you have done. It's excellent. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for this opportunity. And, you know, it's sad because, you know, it's crazy that you have to leave US to go do research on Kenya in Kenya, you know, and they are not, you know, if you're in Kenya doing this kind of research, you're doing, it should not be really expensive if, you know, it's not something very costly to do. Universities can afford, our institution can afford to support this, this kind of research. But of course, they don't want to.
It's simply that they don't want to.
Yeah, the priorities are different.
I think what shocks me is that the academics are part of that logic, and if you try to challenge them, it becomes a bit difficult. Yeah,
we have a problem because our academics want to become
bureaucrats.
That's what they want to do. They want to use that as a springboard to become bureaucrats, and as long as that's their aim, then they don't have motivation to challenge anything. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I hope we will have this extend the conversation again another time. But we are grateful, and thank you so much.